Parmigiano Reggiano is an Italian PDO cheese. It comes from the municipalities of Parma, Reggio Emilia, Modena, Mantua to the right of the Po River, and Bologna to the left of the Reno River. It has been produced for 900 years using artisanal and natural methods without additives or preservatives, with raw milk and long aging. From the farmer to the stock breeder, and from the dairyman to the cheese tester, those who make Parmigiano Reggiano invest care, enthusiasm, and commitment. Now, it's your turn. By opening and portioning the cheese wheel correctly, you will enhance the value of this premium product. This is the only way to be sure you offer your customers a complete sensory experience that makes them aware of its value. We have created this tutorial to make you a real Parmigiano Reggiano expert. Discover how to handle it, present it, and communicate its value in the best way possible. Ready? Let's begin. Look at the cheese wheel. Check to see if there are cuts or deep cracks, and examine the condition of the rind. Clean it with a cloth to get rid of any grease or dust. Find the distinctive marks. There is the certification mark, the month, and the year of aging. This number, with 3 or 4 digits, identifies the dairy where it was produced. You can find out what dairy it comes from in a few seconds on the Parmigiano Reggiano Consortium's website. On the bottom, you'll find this casein tag, a unique tracking code for every wheel. Also make sure there is an EC inspection stamp on the lower side of the cheese wheel. And make sure you're familiar with your national health and safety regulations. Make sure that the cheese wheel is at room temperature and has been left outside the cold room for at least 24 hours. Place the wheel at the height and angle that allows you to apply adequate pressure. Do you see traces of grease? Dry them so it will be easier to handle. And now get your knives ready. 1 hook knife, 2 Parmesan cheese knives, 1 knife with a serrated tip knife, and 1 cheese spatula. By cutting a whole Parmigiano Reggiano cheese wheel, you exalt the grainy texture of the cheese, a characteristic of its long aging. And now decide how to open the wheel. There are 2 ways. Vertically, more practical, ideal at the store. Laterally, the more showy lateral cut is ideal for buffets, trade fairs, or whenever you're in front of an audience. To perform a vertical cut, place the wheel in a horizontal position and trace a midline with a Parmesan cheese knife, dividing the flat part into 2 semicircles. Divide it in half where the stamp is, because the part without dots is behind it. This way, you limit the risk of having a slice without dots. Using the hook knife, cut into the rind along the guideline and keep going down the side of the wheel, called the scalzo. Now turn the wheel over and repeat the process to finish cutting the rind. The best way to turn the wheel is to stand it up, turn it round, and put it back down. Sink the knife with a serrated tip into the center of the flat part. It has to be perfectly straight. Then sink the Parmesan cheese knife into the edge, where the flat part meets the side. Make sure you get the right angle. Turn the wheel again and insert the second Parmesan cheese knife. Wait a few seconds. Take the 3 knives out and turn the wheel over. Repeat the process on the other flat side. Wait for a vertical crack to form. And now, the wheel can be broken open into 2 halves. To continue cutting, take a half and cut it with a hook knife from the center all the way to the side. Turn the wheel upside down and repeat the same procedure to complete marking the rind. Insert the knife with a serrated tip and a fracture line will form. Now put a Parmesan cheese knife into the edge where the flat part and the side meet. Turn the half wheel around and repeat this step. Now it will split into 2 quarters. Now portion the wheel into 2/8. Choose the most stable side of the quarter and work on that. Mark the rind. Insert the serrated knife and then the Parmesan cheese knife. Turn the wheel over and separate the 2 halves with a serrated knife on the cheese side. Be careful not to damage the top part. Now you have 2/8 of Parmigiano Reggiano. Place the wheel in a vertical position. If you're not an expert, get someone to help you to keep it stable. Mark the rind with a hooked knife. All you have to do is follow the line of the central dot between the words Parmigiano and Reggiano. Sink the serrated cheese knife deep down in it. Repeat the operation rotating the wheel and alternating the Parmesan cheese knife with a serrated knife. The knife blade must always penetrate the cheese perpendicularly to the rind. Once you've got all the way around, if the 2 halves haven't loosened up, repeat the procedure. Now, use the spatula. The 2 halves of the wheel come apart. Do you want to put on a show? Lay the wheel flat on its base and lift off the top half like the lid of a treasure chest. Place the half wheel with the flat part facing up. Trace a midline on the flat part with a hooked knife and continue cutting down the side. Now wedge the spatula into the center and insert the Parmesan cheese knife into the crust. Raise it and lower it. Make sure you cut a decent notch into the side when you get there. Turn the wheel around and repeat the operation. Turn the wheel upside down. Insert the spatula into the center of the exposed cheese. Turn the half wheel around and continue in the same way. You'll see that a fracture line will form. Separate the half wheel, and you now have 2 quarters of Parmigiano Reggiano. Arrange the quarter with the rind facing up. Using the hooked knife, cut from the center of the fracture line of the flat part moving outwards, and then on the side. With a Parmesan cheese knife, repeat the operation to divide the 2 quarters. Turn the quarter around and separate the cheese using the 2 knives. First with a spatula, and then with a Parmesan cheese knife. Now you have 2/8 of Parmigiano Reggiano. To continue portioning, put the 1/8 of the wheel with the cheese facing down. Take the Parmesan cheese knife and trace a line to divide the 1/8 in half. Put the point of the Parmesan cheese knife in and push it down. Continue with this up and down movement. Slice down with a sharp movement when you get to the side rind. Now, with the internal cheese facing upwards, repeat the cut, alternating between the spatula and the Parmesan knife. Put the point of the Parmesan cheese knife in and make sure that the blade splits the rind. Repeat the operation along the entire line. Turn the 1/8 over. Trace the midline with a spatula. Use the Parmesan cheese knife to separate the cheese. Repeat this operation for the rest of the triangles. If you want to cut smaller portions, use sideways cuts to guarantee a proper cheese rind ratio, or remove the rind from the flat part and then make the horizontal cuts. Remember, precise portioning reduces waste. To ensure maximum quality, Parmigiano Reggiano cheese should be cut and graded as and when requested by the customer. For the sake of practicality, you can pre-package the cheese 1 or 2 days beforehand. However, the cutting and grading must be done at the place of sale. Pre-packaging can be done in 2 ways: with clear food wrap, with cheese wrap wax paper after cutting. It is good practice to round off any sharp edges to avoid damaging transparent food wrap used for packaging. Cheeses with Parmigiano Reggiano PDO status, pre-packaged in the area of origin before market release, must bear the collective mark bearing the words Parmigiano Reggiano, wedge, and wheel. If the product is pre-packaged at the point of sale, this mark cannot be used. If you are in Europe, you can use the denomination Parmigiano Reggiano cheese and the ingredients milk, salt, rennet. For non-EU countries, follow the current labeling regulations or contact the consortium. You can preserve the entire wheel for many months in conditions similar to those of the aging storeroom and clean the rind from time to time. Temperature up to 61 to 64 degrees Fahrenheit, low lighting, high level of relative humidity. Vacuum-packed products can be preserved at fridge temperatures for up to 6 months. Fresh products that have been portioned or removed from a vacuum bag can be kept in the fridge for several days in an airtight container, transparent food bag, or wrapped in transparent food wrap. If you see a thin layer of fat or mold, don't worry. You can return the cheese to its optimum state by removing it and cleaning the surface. When you display pieces of Parmigiano Reggiano, always show the identification data of the product found on the rind. Month, year, and serial number. If you stock cheeses of different ages, make a sign or chalkboard where you explain their different characteristics. You will find lots of useful information and tips on the consortium's website. Communication with the customer is fundamental when presenting Parmigiano Reggiano. You can add value to your point of sale with special display material. For further information about communication materials, visit the consortium's website. Always guide clients in their choice by asking them to tell you their intended final use. A cheese aged 15 to 18 months is ideal, thinly sliced in salads. A cheese aged 24 months is perfect to grate on pasta. Have undecided customers try a shaving of cheese and offer them a brief description of its sensory and nutritional characteristics. Do you know how to make shavings of Parmigiano Reggiano? Insert the Parmesan cheese knife a few centimeters into the cheese and then turn it. Look, the shaving forms on its own. Remember to always inform your clients of the unique nutritional properties of Parmigiano Reggiano, of its high level of digestibility and its high calcium content. Enhancing the value of Parmigiano Reggiano